No, but what does queer mean, though?
Queer, it's just a label.
What does the label mean?
Yeah, so queer is just something that you identify as with your sexuality. It can be related to gender too.
Right, but how do you know once you achieve queer?
So it's different for everyone.
Okay. Right. No, I know, but that doesn't...
Imagine being Charlie Kirk. Like, you're a millennial and you're cosplaying as perpetually college-aged. I mean, that does work out for him. Charlie happens to have that undercooked vibe that's conducive to masquerading as an 18-year-old. Do you think with enough androchrome he'll develop one of those turgid Elon Musk bodies? Only time will tell. I, for one, look forward to the inevitable body horrors unleashed upon us all by health czar RFK Jr. He's so brave, testing it all on himself like some kind of bronzed up petri dish. Okay, sorry, I'm 25 and have lived through about 200 years worth of headlines. Imagine being Charlie Kirk, an entire 31-year-old man with a wife and kids, and you're debating a teenage girl with your documentary production team just out of frame. You would later title this video, "College Queer is all talk, no facts," and it garners over 1 million views in a matter of days. So how exactly are you going to do this while clinging on to a shred of your dignity still? Well, you start with cognitive dissonance. You construct a narrative that conveniently explains your actions, and then you defend that narrative until it becomes your personal sense of reality. See, Charlie Kirk isn't debating this college kid, he's teaching them. About what exactly?
What are your favorite policies that you want implemented from
Yeah, I think we should drill our natural resources to bring down the price of oil and natural gas.
Oh. Huh. I don't see how supporting the oil industry is going to educate this college queer. I do wonder though, is there any chance there could be ulterior motives here? I mean, Charlie Kirk's media company did publish something called 10 Ways Fossil Fuels Improve Our Daily Lives. I guess we'll never know. We know. We've known since like 2016. I guess Charlie Kirk was right. Fossil fuels do keep us warm in the winter. And the summer. So what exactly happened to Americans? Because the same country that once put a man on the moon is now trying to get rid of the Department of Education. It seems like every year we somehow get dumber, but that wasn't always the case. Since the 1950s, each generation has scored higher in IQ tests, a phenomenon called the Flynn effect. However, at least in Western countries, a reverse Flynn effect started in the 2000s, marking an incremental fall in IQ scores that worsened with Generation Alpha. I, for one, feel like a reincarnated housewife diagnosed with hysteria on my 16th lobotomy. Soon they're gonna need a blend tech to make any progress up there. Look, as a psychology student that specializes in developmental disability, I don't think IQ is all that useful, at least not for assessing intelligence. Despite being called the intelligence quotient, it was only designed to identify learning challenges in school children over 100 years ago. Also, even when used as intended, IQ is vaguely accurate at best. Something does seem amiss though, considering even Harvard students are struggling to read. I mean, you've seen the results. Donald is poised to be top daddy for another 4 years. And my demographic of Gen Z men helped make that happen. While ballots were still being counted, Charlie Kirk wasted no time reposting a series of TikTok videos showing Gen Z voters recreating Daddy Donald's trademark sciatica dance. There is enough rhetorical undercurrent here to make a sociologist come. I mean, they're dancing to Village People's YMCA, yet I don't think Mr. Traditional Marriage would appreciate what the song describes doing in the YMCA. It's fun to stay at the YMCA. They have everything for young men to enjoy. You can hang out with all the boys. Yeah, you can get yourself clean. You can have a good meal. Because Lord knows you're gonna need some protein after bathroom cruising. I guess Donald's Big Mac spread was good for something.
I'm for traditional marriage.
But this lack of awareness is nothing compared to the cognitive dissonance necessary to support the harbinger of climate doom while being a random working class 20-something. Like, for Charlie Kirk, I get it. He needs fat checks from Exxon to afford his $5 million gated mansion because That's what it looks like to hold the elites accountable. But Kyle from Oklahoma is not dancing for ExxonMobil executives. There's a cognitive dissonance that's increasingly on display in American life. At some level, denial is kinda necessary to function in our society. It would be really difficult to drive to work every day if you seriously considered the danger of your commute. The average person will experience 3 to 4 car accidents in their lifetime. That's 3 to 4 times you'll risk financial ruin without any time to prepare for it. But we gotta go be wage slaves somehow, so unless this country magically gets train-pilled, it's necessary to ignore reality a little bit. However, I think our collective denial can be far more pernicious than helping us get to work without a panic attack. We're simultaneously told that our planet will soon burst into flames from our obsession with burning fossil fuels, while Energy Secretary Chris Wright ushers in a golden age of American prosperity with his oil fracking company. You see, the CEOs are the innovators, bringing real value to shareholders. Just ignore the fact that we're all gonna die, because how could you see anything past the splendor of Exxon's record profits? Seriously, how are we supposed to make sense of any of this? Well, we don't. It benefits the powerful if we're all confused and exhausted. Why do you think Charlie Kirk and his 2,000 clones spawned by the Heritage Foundation speak in such cryptic ways? Half the posts on Twitter, formerly X according to me, are cryptic statements or questions in less than 10 words. What is going on? Girl, I don't know, aren't you calling yourself a journalist? 149 attacks in Sweden last year. Okay, and? It benefits the Elons of the world if everyone is left arguing on what his point even is, instead of focusing on what he's actually doing. Once everyone is left uninformed or sufficiently confused, misinformation is much more effective. Then, the NRA can get millions of people to believe their schools are supporting cat-identifying students by outfitting classrooms with litter boxes. In reality, schools occasionally stock buckets in classrooms so students can use the bathroom in lockdown while bullets fly through hallways. Not only does this pull attention away from who's responsible for schools needing piss buckets in the first place, but it has the added benefit of leading to conversations of defunding public education. That way, as more kids are funneled away from school and into prison, corporations like Walmart can have even more cheap labor. In this episode of Finding Subtext, I want to interrogate the ways our attention is being directed away from the powerful and towards each other. Between exhaustion, artificial confusion, and outright gaslighting, our culture has created a toxic cycle of victim blaming and avoidance. Let's get into this. We're made to live under conditions that are impossible to process. If you need an example of this, try having fun. Seriously, what do you enjoy doing? Is it playing video games? Yeah, that's harmless, right? Here, let's play a game of Minecraft. But first, do we want the Java edition or the Bedrock edition? What about Minecraft Dungeons or Legends? Maybe we'll take a look at story mode, though do we need to play Season 1 to understand Season 2? Though regardless, we can't forget our Minecraft Marketplace Pass. Though if we want to play together, I fear we'll need a Minecraft Realms subscription. But is it worth subscribing to Minecraft Realms Plus or just the regular Realms? And should we subscribe for the Java edition or the Bedrock edition? You know what, let's just play it on console. That should be simple. Since Microsoft owns Minecraft, it's probably best to play it on Xbox. So should we buy an Xbox 360, Xbox One, Xbox One X, Xbox One S, Xbox Series X, or Xbox Series S? Either way, I should probably join Xbox Game Pass, and I guess while I'm at it, there's also Xbox Cloud Gaming. Maybe I'll just circle back to using a computer the good old-fashioned way. But do I need a Mac, a PC, or a Copilot Plus PC? As participants of capitalism, we're told that our destiny is solely our responsibility. That feels good in theory, but have we ever considered that we're not omniscient? Sure, I could eat healthy and exercise 5 days a week, but I could still get cancer tomorrow, and then I'll have to file for bankruptcy. If someone in my family owns a home, I'll maybe survive, but otherwise I'll have to know someone with an unusually accommodating landlord. Otherwise I'll wind up on the streets, which is not exactly a sterile environment to administer the chemotherapy I won't have money for. So, I'm supposed to practice a form of economic hypervigilance so extreme that I'll have the money lying around to pay for any any medical emergency. By the way, chemotherapy costs an average of $150,000. So to fend for myself like a real man, a lone alpha wolf if you will, I'll need to 1. Choose to be born in a family of homeowners in a zip code with good schools who value supporting their children as adults. 2. Go to college. 3. Immediately find employment that offers top-tier health insurance while also paying me far above market rate so I can build my $200,000 rainy day fund and simultaneously pay off my student loans. 4. Cook 3 well-balanced organic meals per day and work out 3 to 5 days per week. The amount of information you would need to plan for every possible thing that might go wrong in your life would probably require a nuclear-powered AI data center to process. And this is just the daily calculus you're expected to run in service of staying alive. On top of this, you're expected to clean your home, budget, find hobbies, maintain a social life, get married, have children, provide for your family, develop your career, and plan for retirement. Oh, and where are you going to cram in a skincare routine and maintain your sleep hygiene? What about your cortisol phase? With this much going on in the background, selecting which version of Minecraft to play becomes an arduous task. Even if you do everything right, sanding down every flaw until you're basically an NPC, you'll still need to research what the hell a Microsoft Copilot AI PC is just to enjoy a game of Minecraft. After a long day at work doing neurosurgery or whatever the hell it is you do to fund a middle-class lifestyle in this economy. And if you get overwhelmed and blindly purchase the wrong version of Minecraft, that's your fault. How could you be so careless with your money? Didn't anyone teach you the value of $1? Maybe if you thought before you bought, you wouldn't be in this situation to begin with. I tried, but Google doesn't even work anymore. And if I look on Reddit like I used to, half of the comments are AI bots trying to sell me something. You young people and your excuses. People have survived for thousands of years without the internet. Just plan better. You might have heard that we live in a rape culture. Sorry, a rape culture? Rape? Oh, you're gonna make me say it, aren't you? Grape culture. Yup, that's what it's called. This term has become something of a rallying cry in recent years, just like all men are sexist or defund the police. It's not a rallying cry for the people behind these terms, more so for those who have been led to misunderstand them. When the average person hears, "we live in a grape culture," they hear a certain claim. Americans like and support grape. From that line of thinking, you can look at the fact that Diddy is behind bars and think, well, what is that then? You start to feel gaslit. Like, why are these blue-haired woke twinks telling me I can just go ahead and grape someone when obviously that's not allowed? But Americans support grape was never the claim levied in the first place. So for the men in my audience, all 6 of you, I promise the big scary phrase that's not very intuitive isn't really all that unfair to us. The general concept of grape culture is that men will force themselves onto someone not simply for their own gratification, but to practice dominance or superiority. Our culture assists in this process by constantly moving the goalpost. First, we ask, what were they wearing? Only if they wore the Amish special do we proceed to the next hurdle. Well, where'd they meet this guy anyways? It doesn't matter that 70 to 90% of incidents are premeditated. We focus on a tiny handful of cases with literally any room for doubt at all, then apply that to everyone experiencing it. Only against victims do we take the classic, well, there's always a few bad apples, and reverse that to imply a questionable isolated incident is cause for a generalized doubt. Did you hear the news about that crazy woman making false accusations? The media is a load-bearing pillar in this severance from reality. News corporations do this in a few ways. They might disproportionately write stories of false accusations, or in the editing process, alleged incidents can be described as relations for liability reasons. I mean, yeah, it's a bit weird she would have personal relations with her boss, in his office no less, but I think she was just a bit freaky, then realized she was in over her head. Media portrayal has real consequences. A 2018 study found that only 5% of news articles contained outright bias, such as downplaying an incident's severity or expressing sympathy for the perpetrator. That would sound like a pretty small problem if those 5% of articles didn't correlate with real-world cases of rape. In counties where local news stations did join that 5%, there were more cases of rape, and law enforcement was less likely to intervene in them. This potentially creates a feedback loop where perpetrators feel increasingly emboldened and distrust grows as incidents rise. Combine that with how feminist movements are so frequently mentioned in news coverage about grapes, you have a volatile combination where a lot of artificial doubt is given a specific target. It's easier than ever to whip up a story these days. What with all that Me Too, CRT, DEI nonsense? Like, don't get me wrong, I care about women or whatever, but haven't we gone a bit too far with all this? Men are entitled to due process too, you know. Reality so quickly slips through the fingertips of someone that started this process with well-intentioned skepticism. It's easy to mislead someone if they don't have all the information, and frankly, you shouldn't need to have all the information. Given the sheer amount of things we have to worry about, including Microsoft Copilot AI Plus PCs, I don't expect the average dude bro from Connecticut to understand the sociocultural dynamics of the gender power discrepancy as applied to grape statistics. Honestly, I'm not sure even a journalist should be expected to master the dynamics of every topic they cover either. Decades ago, when America was bestest or whatever, local newspapers were a stable business model which allowed journalists time to be a journalist. But kids these days are spending money on luxuries like antidepressants and therapist copays instead of buying the weekly paper. Personally, I just become a computer science major trying to block all the JavaScript from the New York Times just so I can read their latest schizo rant about trans people. But most youths are getting those New York Times articles turned to sludge, digested through Joe Rogan's bussy, and that's the extent of their informational intake regarding the world at large. With the only populations willing or able to pay for the news now reaching their graves, we're left with a news media system that's desperately looking for money. In 2023, Microsoft replaced all their journalists at MSN News with AI. Bet they needed a lot of Microsoft Copilot. Now, I would think that MSN was on life support regardless. It was the default landing page of Microsoft Internet Explorer, the web browser that peaked before smartphones existed and has been discontinued for 10 years now. However, its presence has grown like a tumor buried in the folds of Windows 11's sea of bloatware. So now, unfortunately, Mima is getting her news from Microsoft Copilot inside the MSN News app, which is also called Microsoft News and Microsoft Start for some reason. When a news outlet is dying, they tend to publish the same type of content one can find in the rotting corpse of their own local paper. Lots of obituaries, real estate transactions, maybe plans for a town meeting if you're lucky, all types of articles that can be computer automated. But computer automation, at least in a traditional sense, is hard-coded logic written by humans. AI, on the other hand, is a system of fuzzy associations between numbers, lacking the precision for nonfiction writing. Paradoxically, that's a great thing in research contexts, where experts oversee automated tools instead of getting displaced by them. Using AI, scientists can process data sets larger than humans could fathom, locating patterns or insights that lead to breakthroughs. AI has deciphered ancient scrolls too old to unravel, and predicted weather anomalies which existing models failed to identify. I don't think anyone has a problem with this type of AI. The problem is when AI is haphazardly deployed to save money, replacing skilled workers with unskilled computers that burn through natural resources. Almost immediately after Microsoft replaced their 800 journalists with an AI model, simple articles like obituaries contained bizarre errors. For example, MSN reported that Brandon Hunter, a former NBA player who died unexpectedly at 42 years old, died useless at 42 years old. Another article listing tourist attractions in Ottawa, Canada featured the Ottawa Food Bank as a stop you shouldn't miss. Consider going to it on an empty stomach, the AI wrote, for a tourist attraction list. But MSN doesn't solely pump out obituaries and city guides. They also attempt the news. If you understand how AI works, you'll know this is not a good application of existing AI technology. That thing you did with your phone keyboard in 2016, where you mashed the recommended words until it generated a nonsense paragraph that looked semi-legible on first glance, That's an AI model. There is no journalistic review or fact-checking of AI training data. Hell, they don't even get copyright permission for that. So if Microsoft's text prediction model gets trained on a lot of Twitter posts where people are making fun of Sleepy Joe, well then, MSN might just write an article falsely accusing him of falling asleep during a moment of silence for the victims of the Maui wildfire, which they did. Although Joe's plug apparently remembered the Addy that day, try explaining AI hallucinations to your grandmother who reads MSN because it comes preloaded on the laptop from Walmart she uses to send emails and malware. So what happens when a major scandal enters the news cycle? Say, Orange Man getting another grape conviction. The few humans left directing MSN bots might want to cover that. If we live in a culture that shields the powerful from consequences, that culture will produce books, tweets, blogs, and videos which do just that. Then, Microsoft's engineers will scour the internet for examples of coherent writing to steal, using it to teach a computer how to string a sentence together. AI needs a lot of training data, and publishing companies have copyright lawyers, so perhaps YouTube transcripts and long Reddit posts will suffice. Regardless of intent, AI models are trained to support grape culture. They're trained to blame victims for their own suffering, and if anything, that's a happy accident for those in charge. This problem isn't contained within the slimy confines of computerized media outlets like MSN. When a journalist making barely $27 an hour on average is ordered to write and publish 2 stories a day, they might use ChatGPT to summarize their sources into bullet points, or clean up a few paragraphs, or write a conclusion. It goes without saying that ChatGPT lacks sensitivity training. Sure, it might woke scold you for discussing certain topics, but don't mistake that for the AI possessing a coherent ideology. Do you really think OpenAI cares if ChatGPT respects everyone's pronouns? If they could get away with it, they would make ChatGPT as problematic as the user wants it to be, for that yields higher revenue and higher user retention. But due to PR and PR alone, a flimsy content filter is placed over existing models, rendering them family-friendly centrists, but only on the surface. A news editor skimming dozens of rushed ChatGPT-infused articles likely won't see any red flags before clicking publish. But underneath a brand-safe veneer, the AI has made hundreds of choices, just as any writer does. In an article about grape, the AI may choose to mention if the victim had anything to drink that night. Without a coherent ideology to follow, the AI model might just ask, "What was she wearing?" like a random dude bro from Connecticut did among thousands like him, inadvertently contributing to AI trading data. Now, it may seem like a strange comparison, but I think this is an example of grape culture too. Maybe not in a literal sense, but I'll say that in the past few years, my wallet has been graped more than ever, and those in power are quick to blame me for that. If you buy the wrong version of Minecraft because there's like 30 to choose from, that's your fault for not doing the research. Sure, for most people, wasting $20 is not going to ruin their lives, but we're buying a lot more than video games on a day-to-day basis. That's what makes the 30 versions of Minecraft so frustrating, because having fun now involves the same amount of research as selecting a health insurance plan. Our leisure activities are failing to offer the recovery they promise. In a state of chronic exhaustion, we're psychologically wired to pick a random option and hope for the best. Robbed of a viable escape, our brains will find an escape for us, even if that means shutting down. Every November, I go shopping for a year of health insurance, one of the most dystopian activities I'm forced to do in our godforsaken country. I'm forced to do this because otherwise I could easily die on the streets, or maybe in jail as my town made homelessness illegal last year. So, literally under a threat on my life, I opened the state website a private corporation overcharged the government for in 2007. After my cognitive abilities are thoroughly eviscerated from 20 pages of vague questionnaires, I'm given access to the free market. $1,000 a month? I'd pay you $1,000 one time right now to end my life. Now, the average American reads below the 6th grade level, making words like psychology illegible. So, with that in mind, should I get Blue Cross Blue Shield Blue Preferred PPO with Blue Preferred Platinum 401p710? Or maybe I should spice it up with Blue Options 24J01-20S. Now, Blue Options 24J01-20S is a PPO plan, but do I want preventative care coverage or not? By By the way, preventative is a vocabulary word beyond the 6th grade level. I extracted the text from all 10 pages of this health insurance plan and applied the Dale-Chall readability formula, our most widely used method of assigning numeric grade levels to books. And according to this formula, you would need the reading skills of an intermediate college student to fully understand this legally binding document that determines whether you live or not. This plan is from the state of Florida, where I grew up. Until leaving that state, I was completely illiterate well into my childhood, and I wasn't alone. 61% of Florida students lack basic reading proficiency, and 1 in 4 of their parents don't know how to read at all. But if those parents select the wrong insurance policy and lose their child's doctor, that's their fault. What a bad parent, am I right? Well, I'm glad you're enjoying the teaching position, but aren't your classrooms shrinking by now? Someone ought to do something about the declining birth rate. Soon enough, you're gonna be struggling through phonics with them 4th graders because Shaquandra spent all the money on the Marlboro Man instead of Dr. Seuss. I don't think that's true. Like, yes, our birth rate is declining, but you can't use EBT for cigarettes. That's been illegal since— Put a pipe in it real quick. I'm gonna get the expert out. Okay, what's the average food stamp payout? One-word answer.
$187 per month, or $6.16 per day.
That's more than one word, but I'll take it. How much do a pack of cigarettes cost?
$8 average.
I don't know about you, but I don't think the government needs to buy nearly a pack a day for every single mom who wants to have 8 kids. AI can reinforce bias in the same people who spewed misinformation into its training data to begin with. While a human expert could sense another person's agenda just by their cryptic questions alone, AI lacks the ability for reason, and so it becomes a useful idiot of sorts, offering a sense of credibility where there shouldn't be. Though, as controversial as it may sound, I don't wholly blame people for using AI like this. For the 1 in 2 adults with a reading level below the 6th grade, life is bound to feel overwhelming, if not painful. 70 years ago, you could work the lines at a factory and be solidly middle class. Now you have to read and understand 3 rounds of computerized job screenings and personality tests to land an interview at Taco Bell. I don't think generative AI is a net positive for society, and I honestly feel bad for talking about it this much.
Tunnels coming to set you free, bringing the light for all to see. No more tunnels, no more fear. God is finally here.
We're deforesting the Amazon for this, by the way. The exponential profit motive of corporations is why AI sucks so much, not the technology itself, and that's an important distinction. I have several developmental disabilities, and I use AI to navigate that sometimes. My college has outright ignored my requests for accommodation, and so I've used services like ChatGPT as an accessibility tool. Sometimes my professors, trying to be casual and approachable, write their assignments in vague language. Even in honors classes, I've had professors tell me to just write like 8 pages using the provided sources without any further guidance. So occasionally, I'll send my assignments and class materials to ChatGPT, explaining that I'm on the spectrum and need more detailed instructions. Sometimes, when Outlook is on the verge of giving me a panic attack, I'll have ChatGPT regurgitate my email inbox but with a kinder tone, or warn me if anyone's mad at me. Sometimes when I'm done with an assignment, I'll have ChatGPT grade it by the rubric so I can gather some semblance of confidence and turn it in. I once had a professor who tested a prototype GPT AI model back in 2019 before all this stuff went mainstream. Her colleagues were investigating how computerized systems could help autistic people navigate social situations in real time, giving them haptic feedback on a smartwatch based on how their conversations were going. That is a permissible use of AI to me. I'm studying to become a clinical social worker, and I've seen AI models begin to enter therapy settings before I can even think about getting licensed. These usually aren't cloud-based AI services, rather large computers in the basements of behavioral health centers that securely store patient data, so as not to violate HIPAA. It objectively would help a therapist seeing 6 clients a day to have an AI consultant log the content of each session. A human therapist simply does not have the time to listen to hundreds of hours of session recordings, nor can they run detailed simulations based on client data. However, that therapist seriously needs to keep their own notes as well, no computer involved. But that's the crux of the issue, isn't it? The problem isn't the technology, it's the profit motive. As a for-profit enterprise, the healthcare industry uses technological innovations to spread human workers even thinner. It's not enough to give psychologists an accessory that enhances their job performance. The next question is, how can we replace psychologists with the tool itself? The creators of the tool want more users, and industry leaders want less workers because that creates record profits for both parties. When record profits are achieved, the general public is supposed to look at those industry leaders as aspirational. We internalize the exponential profit motive, hoarding ourselves as a resource. From that angle, ChatGPT goes from being an accessibility tool to an existential threat. People use it to generate content sludge that pollutes the internet, a space where millions have sought refuge because the outside world has grown too expensive. Assignments cease to be learning opportunities, but a utility bill of sorts. It's something you pay with your time credits in exchange for a diploma, which is nothing but a glorified key fob to unlock the door of employment. I do my own assignments and research. These videos are 100% written and researched by me, a human, for better or worse. The only AI you'll see in these videos are some of the visual effects I use, but even those are mostly handmade. I've seen other YouTubers rely on services like Perplexity AI for their research, and I can always tell, because their videos occasionally make strange assumptions rooted in a misunderstanding of a niche topic. A misunderstanding that a human wouldn't make. And yes, before someone comments, AI is incredibly bad for the Earth. I feel a visceral guilt whenever I open ChatGPT because I know how much electricity that takes. In fact, because of the environmental impact combined with my disdain for OpenAI, I've started using AI models that I optimize for power efficiency and run on my own devices. When you live at a disadvantage, be it disability or illiteracy, I cannot stress enough how valuable it is to have 24/7 contact with a tutor, or a translator, dietitian, or whatever else you need, even if AI generally sucks at all of those things. We're conditioned to blame the symptom rather than the problem and view certain people as symptoms. I just finished an entire semester of writing without using ChatGPT for I'm better than you. We all are. I have never used ChatGPT, and it's because I'm fundamentally better than anyone who has. This framing treats AI like some type of immoral vice we all have to rise against. But if someone is solely relying on ChatGPT to get through college, I think it's more productive to ask why. Why doesn't this person value learning? Why is their institution enabling this? Most importantly, what is this person's relationship with the task they're choosing to distance themselves from by using AI? And who benefits from that? Rather than believing your classmates are beneath you, maybe think about how they've learned to commodify their own education. Instead of shaming generic dude bros for their beliefs, shame the people who inflicted those beliefs upon them. Because in lieu of AI, we already have a withering media ecosystem that's lashing out for engagement. It's sowing doubt in the exact places we don't need it, obscuring where we do. This is all in service of corporations. It benefits business owners if the median voter hates welfare. Any public good we privatize develops a tax of sorts. How could it not? Even if we assume the government is woefully inefficient, which I'm not saying it isn't, that waste still pales in comparison against multi-million-dollar bonus packages offered by corporations to senior executives. If your utility companies merge into a mega conglomerate, you can't vote them out of power. You just end up in debt when they inevitably charge as much as possible. Profit is a tax levied against the consumer here, and some of that profit is used to insert terms like welfare or rogue spending into articles, creating a negative association without need for an explicit argument that could be disproven. In 2016, the New York Times published more about Hillary's private email server in 6 days than it did about policy in over 60 days. More was written about her emails than all of Donald's scandals combined. Only about 3% of their coverage directly compared their policies at all. I'd venture to guess that's because if we changed anything, that would pose a bigger threat to the elite than a year of public discourse about email servers. Though hey, leave it to a woman to be a trailblazer. If she hadn't butchered the concept of basic cybersecurity, then Donald might have thought twice about doing the exact same thing but worse this time around. I'm editing like 3 months after filming, and man, did that age badly. Imagine working one of the most prestigious computer engineering roles in the world, and you're told to email classified documents to transition.com. I hope they do transition. It would be the only entertaining thing they have left to do. Maybe after all the bans go into effect, they can kiss over their latest batch of bathtub estrogen. I wasn't being serious, I promise. This is a family vlogging channel, don't worry. All of the labor that you're profiting from here is from the children I spawned. Part of how we're kept fighting sideways instead of upwards is the implanted self-hatred which motivates us. Grape culture works not just by creating a society that actively resists accountability, but in psychologically hijacking the victim directly. Much of that work is accomplished by the act itself. Having your will totally defied by someone, and that person displaying a disregard for what they're doing, or worse, a real enjoyment of it, does something to a person. It definitely affected me when I was assaulted, and I was injured in the process, so then I had a physical reminder of this person's ability to act beyond my will without them giving it a second thought. By the way, my health insurance company did not like the surgery consultation I had afterwards. I needed Luigi. At first, I disassociated for several months, but then I was giving it a second, third, fourth, and 20th thought, all while that person had easily moved on. I lost 20 pounds, stopped going to the gym, and then I felt even less worthy. Though I was newly married at the time, I stopped doing much of anything in our bedroom for almost 2 years, never able to articulate why. That made me feel even less worthy, as men are socialized to seek a sense of value in how active they are. My spouse was understanding, if not a little confused, but still. The ways I reacted were very normal. There isn't enough research into this, but one small study found that shame was among the primary reasons victims kept their experiences a secret. Now, combine that with a grape culture which doesn't believe the victim, who statistically already doubts their own story and will often disclose years after the fact like I did. It goes without saying that staying quiet inadvertently benefits the perpetrator, but I can't help but notice this phenomenon in radically different contexts. Shame effortlessly reinforces the status quo and by extension American individualism, hence why the elite reinforce it so heavily. As an ideology, shame is sold by a veneer of safety. We're conditioned to believe that if we allow shame to motivate our actions, it will grant us a secure position in the world. Grape victims buy into this shame, in part to recover a semblance of inner stability. They tell themselves if they just did the right thing, their assault wouldn't have happened. Even though it hurts to ruminate like this, it can feel productive, like you're learning from your mistakes to stay safe in the future. However, this type of thinking only makes things worse. By refusing to accept the harsh reality that sometimes bad things happen to undeserving people, you prevent yourself from moving on. Additionally, this also shifts the blame away from the perpetrator back onto yourself. Instead of holding them accountable, you continually blame yourself for the sake of this false premise that you could guarantee safety through individual behavior. In reality, no outcome is guaranteed, but to accept the messy, unpredictable nature of life is to accept uncertainty, something humans aren't naturally good at doing. Rather than sit with the fear engendered by uncertainty, most people will blame an individual instead. In 2021, just 3 days before Christmas, 46-year-old Cheryl Cabales stopped at her local Circle K gas station in Palm Harbor, Florida. Sitting in the back of her Honda Pilot SUV were Cheryl's 2 youngest children, 14-year-old Savannah and her 11-year-old brother Sebastian. Upon reaching the nearest fuel pump, their mother exited the car. At the same time, another woman navigated her small convertible to an available spot on the opposite side. Unfortunately, as the convertible reached its destination, the driver accidentally hit the accelerator instead of the brake. This Circle K had multiple design flaws, including a total lack of any guardrails in front of all the fuel pumps. As a result, the convertible accelerated into the dispenser, toppling it directly onto Cheryl, who was now pinned against her car on the other side. As her 2 children watched from inside the car, several gallons of pressurized gasoline sprayed upwards from the underground fuel system, ignited by the fuel pump's exposed wires. Savannah and Sebastian escaped their flaming car, ran inside the gas station, and desperately screamed for help. A Circle K employee repeatedly pressed the government-mandated emergency stop buttons, yet the fire only escalated, resulting in 5 explosions. Cheryl later succumbed to her injuries at the scene. Now, I don't think it's possible for a victim to be more perfect than Cheryl, Savannah, and Sebastian Cabales. Cheryl was literally just pumping gas into her quintessential mom car, and her children did everything right, including trying to use a fire extinguisher on their own mother. The unnamed woman who hit the pump with her car was also pretty blameless here, making a simple and extremely common driving error. Just like everyone else in this situation, she was a victim of circumstances out of her control. I would hope that people would rightfully blame Circle K, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, for leaving delicate electrified machinery handling flammable liquids fully exposed to a constant rotation of moving vehicles. If not that, maybe blame Circle K for mislabeling the emergency shutoff buttons, which didn't actually turn off the fuel delivery system. Or blame Circle K for using fire suppression devices that didn't suppress the flow of gas. Unfortunately, we don't live in a society equipped to navigate systemic failures like this. Even when multi-billion-dollar corporations, or the systems they construct around us, are so obviously to blame, we are primed to point at an individual. At first, there wasn't much of a response to the story of Cheryl Cabales. However, once the surviving children decided to form a lawsuit, a shame-induced societal impulse to defend corporations whipped into overdrive.
Cheryl's daughter, Savannah, witnessed the horrific sight. She's speaking with us for the first time.
It felt forever until I heard the sirens. And then by the time they were there, I just felt like the world stopped moving, basically.
In 2022, attorneys representing the Cabales family sued numerous defendants.
The family's attorney says that they also made a shocking discovery, that Circle K and its contractors destroyed evidence.
I think it's really sad, but how is it the store fault? I don't believe this is negligent on Circle K. This is negligent on the senior citizeness that recklessly ran into the pump and calls it to fall over. This guy is talking about pushing a button that don't stop fires from burning. Once a fire starts, you had to get the appropriate fire extinguisher and put it out. You mean the fire extinguisher they tried using? Okay, yeah, cool. Shame on the attorney. Circle K shouldn't have to pay them. The person that hit the pump should pay. All right, Wendy, how do you suppose we squeeze millions of dollars out of a random woman from Florida? What's the move if she files for bankruptcy? Are we gonna throw her in jail for accidentally hitting a gas pedal once? Terrible loss, but this fuel shutoff would not have stopped the fire in an instant, as the lawyer says. Fuel would stop flowing, but what fuel was already on the ground would continue to burn. As you can tell, these people are not operating from logic, but emotion. They would rather see the driver get punished than have Circle K put up a few guardrails. Because in their minds, if the driver had been shamed into hypervigilance, this tragedy never would have happened. They want to believe we are all fully in control of our actions and their consequences 100% of the time, and putting up guardrails is to accept that's not the case. The guardrails would be a physical reminder that accidents happen, and we could easily become Cheryl Cabales at any moment. The lack of guardrails are a reminder that we can easily become victims of systemic oversights far beyond our control. It's much easier to shame an individual than to grapple with our own fragility, especially as shame has the added benefit of erasure. When someone feels ashamed, they tend to withdraw from society. When a person is deemed shameful, they're usually incarcerated, which forcibly withdraws them from society. By doing this, individuals get to psychologically avoid challenging realities, while corporations get less oversight in more private prisons. Grape victims are questioned in part because if we accept how common grape is, we have to contend with our own risk of experiencing it. Thrusting shame onto a victim makes them and the uncomfortable realities they embody disappear from view. At the same time, it soothes our own anxieties. When someone asks, "What was she wearing?" they're compelling the victim to shut down while simultaneously convincing themselves that guaranteed safety is not only possible, but as simple as picking the correct outfit. But shame never makes you safer, quite the opposite actually. In a world that jails people for accidentally backing up into a fuel pump, you also risk excessive punishment for simple human errors. But people don't see it that way, in part because shame divorces you from a hypothetical underclass of deserving victims. See, you would never run into that fuel pump because you're a careful driver. This is exactly what corporations want, a society where no one listens to victims, thus making accountability impossible. We are all victims experiencing undue shame in this country, especially in the context of employment and economics. People are constantly degraded in the workplace, made to feel in competition with their peers, motivated to compete by a fear of inadequacy. At work, you're pressured not to disclose your income. It's pretty obvious why. Your boss would make slightly less money with a healthy, unionized workforce underneath them. Can't risk fixing the gender pay gap, for that would return less stolen value to shareholders. Even outside of the workplace, finances come with immense shame. 62% of Americans feel reluctant to share their income, and 26% have lied about it. 57% of adults judge themselves for their income, and 57% feel they need a mental reset when it comes to finances. These numbers demonstrate a pretty high degree of inner turmoil, like how 80% want to learn new money management skills, while also 60% already feel consumed by an obsessive focus on money, and 33% said this shame was a barrier to socializing. After getting assaulted, I too wanted a vague mental reset. Early on, I avoided my situation while also sleeping around a lot with strangers because I felt the need to learn how to do it correctly. I'd keep telling myself, I just gotta survive this one and then I'll finally understand. It definitely felt like a barrier to my social life, and I'd say I felt consumed by it at points. If you violate the social order and disclose your unpaid bills or difficulty affording daycare, you're often doubted in your struggle. What, are you allergic to Excel or something? It's called a budget. Stop going to Starbucks and start putting that money into a high-yield savings account. Maybe then your daughter won't grow up with moldy walls and bad schools. But it's not your fault, and I mean that. Statistically, I can be correct in saying that without knowing who's watching. If you're 30 years old with an income that falls in the bottom 20th percentile, you have a 50-50 shot of changing classes at all, and that usually just means being slightly less poor when you're elderly. If you're still in that bottom 20th percentile by your 40s, you have a less than 3% chance of entering the top 40th percentile. And when I say top 40th percentile, that means $55,000 a year, which isn't remotely enough to qualify for the average apartment listed on Zillow at $2,000 a month. Sure, you can delude yourself into thinking you'll beat the odds with enough gumption, but I'm sure more than 3% of 40-year-olds have tried to escape poverty, and it's worth asking how you're any different from them. Believing your will can defy statistics is precisely the sort of thing the powerful want you to believe. That way, you can waste the decades fighting an impossible battle that was constructed around you instead of looking up. There's a reason a 20-year-old has more class mobility than a 30-year-old. Some of them go to college, where they network with enough rich people to pull them up a few classes. With that in mind, it's not surprising that Charlie Kirk has spent his entire adult life on college campuses, telling an audience of millions to flee the privileged grounds he stands upon. And for him, it's simply not enough to shore up an infinite supply of cheap, uneducated labor. That's why his organization, Turning Point USA, has launched Turning Point Academy, offering totally unaccredited educational programming to children of any age. When those children become illiterate adults and wind up in jail for unpaid medical bills they couldn't read, American society will blame them for it because we live in a grape culture in more ways than one.